OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 146, Weight of Dynasty. The hell? The infiltrator states as she receives the update from a few basic chatbots that she had tweaked to keep her updated and such. A dust storm? This was way too fast. She'd have to inform her employer through the Dropbox. This is not to plan. What the fuck is going on? The field commander of White Spark Squad of the Fireblades Private Military Corporation demands. She draws her backup pistol and presses it to the head of the woman. What kind of... The storm parts in the same instant that her weapon shatters in her grip, and this time it's so close to her fingers that the grazing of the bullet jerks her arm away. She tries to look to where the shot came from, but the dust storm is a perfect screen. She can barely even make out the silhouettes of buildings, let alone a person. Commander, the impact zone is healing, and the round is gone. Her second-in-command states, and she looks back in time to see the pavement crack back into place and meld together again. Oh, put down your weapons or I break them. The whispering voice echoes, takes aim at distant boulder and hits it dead center with a nearly deafening sonic boom. If you'd let me speak, he says in his soft tone. Why do you have a rifle? Where have you been? Are you all right? What's going? The rifle is fired again at the boulder, and he sighs. This is why I left. No one listens. Ever. There is silence, and after a few moments he smiles. There, was that so hard? Are you ready to listen? Arden, what happened to you? His mother asks as she once again pushes her way through the crowd from where he woodwalked her. It's too loud at home. No one listens, and no matter where I went, there was no escaping it. Arden says going into a speech he had practiced in his mind over and over and over again, in case he ever did confront his family about things. He had another ready in case he needed to condemn them all for not listening, and a third in case they decided that him not being in their control was worthy of violence. Granted, all three speeches needed some revision, with him being the first sorcerer of Sobin Reed. But he wasn't completely hopeless without planning. He hopes. A whole third of the crowd starts talking again, and his next shot goes right down the hole, made by the first two, and full on, finishes the hole they were gouging into the boulder. I can be loud now too. I also have about 600 extra rounds. I can keep this up for a while, he says, leaving out the fact that he's already summoned back several of the shots, and unless they deform in some truly exceptional ways, he can reuse them. Why did you go? His mother asks, and he sighs. It was too much, and nobody could hear me over the sounds of their own voice. I needed a quiet place I could be safe in, and there just wasn't one. You had your own room. And no one treated it as anything other than the place they could go if they wanted me for something. It wasn't my space, it was the place people kept taking me from, he says. I need space. I need to be able to think and have time to myself. Not want, need. I was drowning without it. Is that what the note was about? His mother demands, and he gives her an incredulous look. Sure, he wrote it when he was angry and sad, but he had been clear in his. She brings out the note in question, and it looks fine. Yeah, it's written clearly, he says, pointing at it. I can't even read half of this baby, she says, and he pauses, blinks, considers. But I wrote it clearly? No. No, you didn't. You have horrible handwriting. I do. Everyone types, so it didn't matter, but the only reason we can read even half of it is because we brought it to a professional, she says, and he buries his face in his hands. Adept aid? Why does a random family have adept aid? I don't know, but they're clearly well-trained and hostile. They claimed to be a member of the family and were armed with a long-range coil gun. They were clearly in control of a dust storm as they fired on us. They chose non-lethal shots for some reason, but it's clear that there's a powerful Axiom user in the area, and we needed to retreat before we started taking more than a few cuts from the shrapnel of our shattered weapons. This coil gunner, they specifically targeted your weapons? They claimed to be, and considering how every shot shattered a weapon, I'm inclined to believe them. That's no mean feat. To shoot a pistol out of someone's hand or a knife in motion is a trick shot, and the kind most experts don't bother with. We likely have an exceptional sharpshooter, or Or more likely, we have an adept with a very good trick they're pretending is coil gun sharpshooting. Why would someone pretend to not be an adept and instead a markswoman? I mean marksman. It was a man, shit. Someone trained their little boy into a killing machine either way. Or more likely, we have one or more adepts working with a young man who's providing a dissonant, creepy voice for psychological tactics. Well, the voice was oddly devoid of emotion. It could easily have been a computer emulation, which leads to the question as to why someone would protect this family, her employer asks. Why were we sent to attack this family, ma'am? They're on the personal shit list of someone with the power to stomp good and hard and whose peers have at best a 100-to-1 collateral damage ratio with lives lost. To say nothing of the thousands to one for lives ruined and the billions to one for damage to infrastructure. Do the math and tell me how many people will die to keep one family safe. How many lives will be ruined and how much in the way of cities and towns will be lost? What? What the hell have they done? We have reason to believe that they're about to be hit by one of the few multiplanetary sorcerers. The last time one showed up, Lilb Tulelb, one of the wealthiest worlds in the Empire, went into shutdown. It's still in shutdown. No one knows what's going on, but thousands upon thousands of people are being called in, and there's a total information blackout in what's going on. Numerous public figures and politicians have vanished in the confusion, and they may very well be dead. What does that tell you? The boss demands. That the gag order from the courts is backfiring badly. A new voice offers and everyone jumps in the presence of an Apuk man just suddenly there with them. That was it. That was the strange teleport the adept used, the commander says as she draws a pistol and points it right at him. Don't move. There's tritite in this railgun. He looks right down the barrel of the gun and breathes out a tiny buff of green fire flecked with white. The weapon's barrel is instantly destroyed and starts dripping. Who are you? The leader of the Fireblades demands. I am Xueting the Burnstone, sorcerer of the Dark Forest, and the first sorcerer known to have a green war flame sparked with white. And why are you here, Sir Sorcerer? The leader asks. I am here to figure out why you choose to attack the family of one of my fellows. So he is a sorcerer. Does he want to do the deed himself? Is he inconsolable? No, he protected them. I even help. I caused these to be formed, Xueting says as he reaches towards the commander, who flinches back. I'm not going to hurt you. She lets him touch her. He reaches behind her left ear and comes back with a few grains of what look like dust, all but embedded in the whorls of his fingerprints. You can only just barely see them, but these are gricklegrass seeds. That storm wasn't dust. It was a seed storm by the newest sorcerer of all, and the first of Sobenride. You mean those stories of blood and death are coming here? That they've been to Lilb Tulelb and there's already oceans of death? No, that's not what happened at Lilb Tulelb. Again, I can't tell you legally, but while there was a lot of killing, if either of you met the people who were killed and knew what they did, you would have done the deed yourself. The forest was growing, and we found a depraved darkness near the edge. And you've made another forest on Sobenride because practice mostly. Morgarkin wants forests on all Apuk worlds, and maybe every world in the galaxy, or even the universe. And I'm certainly warming up to the idea, Xueting says. But we've lost our first topic. Why have you tried to kill the Karm family? Both women look to each other, then back to Xueting. They tell him. A man abruptly appears in the apartment and then opens the door from inside. Well, that's terrifying. You can just blow a little seed in through the keyhole and teleport in. As can anyone who can teleport. The only thing that makes woodwalking so special is that shit, Xueting says as all three of them walk into Chari Charles' apartment and find her trapped in stasis. Someone's playing games, again. Does this happen often? The leader of the Flame Blades asks as her commander and two bodyguards rush into the bedroom to power down the stasis devices. Some people think they're clever and can get a sorcerer to attack their enemies. Usually they're right, but we also have been learning from this nonsense and are getting better at catching wise. As a whole, yes, I'm glad. As am I. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 147. Weight of Dynasty. What I'm saying is that there are times where even the slightest sound feels like a hammer to my head and I can't shut it out. So when we made sure you couldn't just hole up in your room all day, yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry, baby. I didn't mean to. It's just, did you just say something? Yes, something's happened, Arden says, and there is a pause, before another Apuk man is just suddenly there. Burnstone? Hello, young one. I can see the family reunion is going well. It is. I'll cut to the chase. I followed your attackers through the seeds. They were fooled by an outside party. We found the member of their organization that drove them to attack your family trapped in stasis, and the records on the devices say she's been like that for several months. We expect that this was final hurrah in some kind of long-term sabotage effort. She also had the insignia of one of the queens. But that clue is being regarded with a great deal of suspicion. Then who? Someone else. Someone that wants a fight to break out. They want hot tempers and blood. So we stay calm and do not engage. We do not give them what they want. So you're doing nothing? Arden's mother demands. No, we're watching and waiting for the right moment. Lining up the target, Arden says in his usual soft tone, and Eric's youth points to him and nods. You got it. Are you really the Burnstone? The sorcerer that buried an entire mining town in flaming lava? I am, and I'm lucky they didn't start calling me Stone the Fiery or something. Slager the Cruel, another voice says, and everyone but Arden and Eric's turn quickly to regard a human among them. Hello, everyone. I'm Dale, human sorcerer. Why, Slager the Cruel, main villain of a book that I'm reading to the kids. Really? He's scary. Can be, but he's beaten in the end, mostly by his own cruelty, so it evens out fairly well, Dale remarks. Okay, why? Because by sheer coincidence, the cinder tongue word for lava means something similar in English, slag. Puns don't translate well, which is a pity as it's such a common form of humor, Dale says. Anyways, I'm calling in more boys from the Dark Forest to start poking around, seeing if more people are missing. You think the woman responsible was, if they can impersonate one person, they can impersonate more. We need to find out how many, to say nothing of other agents and the like. When people try to get sneaky, things get complicated fast. Oh, an AI too. Not even full synths. Just a really good logic tree can do all sorts of things if you want to cause trouble, Arden's mother says. That's true, miss. She's a software engineer, Arden says. That explains that. Anyways, our saboteur's victim is having all her personal effects combed over to catch some hint of the spy, but all we've found are the occasional bit of ash with scrambled axiom. Whoever she is, she used an effect that burnt anything her body shed to uselessness wherever she went. So no skin cells, no saliva, no hair, nothing despite her evidently being in the place for months. The queen will have to know of this, Arden's mother says, which is why I'm here. I was hoping to borrow Arden for a bit. Get this whole thing done in as few trips as possible. Whole thing, his mother asks, informing Queen Margat not only about the rise of the lush forest, but its first sorcerer and the saboteur in her lands all at once. Though I reserve the right to retreat. You're a sorcerer, you can retreat at any time from anywhere, Dale says. Nothing can stop you, and it's not worth the trouble to anyone to make a fuss about it. Arden opens his mouth to answer, then stops, thinks, considers, then smiles. He likes the sound of that. And we need to talk about Callie Flynn. The pop star? Eric's youth asks, and both Dale and Arden turn to regard him. My youngest daughter is a fanatic. Through sheer passive osmosis, I've more or less memorized the woman's public life. She won't shut up about her. The trials of being a father, Dale says with a grin. Her stage name is Fenny Flies. Her whole band is with a wing motif in every part of their clothing, different wing outfits for different types of songs. Are random facts about her going to just start popping out now? Probably, Eric's youth teases, and Arden just looks baffled. Let's just get things done with. The sooner the better. I already feel like I was up all night, Arden says. Just hang out in the back and we'll do the talking. If it's too much, just vanish and we'll cover for you. But we do need you there for at least a few seconds, okay? Arden calm nods. So how long? Queen Margaret spins in shock to find herself suddenly with multiple strange men in her office. Until she notices. There we go. The speaker is a handsome APUC man in a formal and clean-cut suit. Honestly, he looks like he'd make a perfect date for one of her daughters. Who are you and why are there Trets in my office as well? You have a problem with Trets? The Tret asks in an amused tone. All right, I've entertained this stupidity enough. Why? Oh, City Shaker. You're all sorcerers then? Yes, the handsome one at the front states with a courtly bow. The bone chewer at your service. She pauses long and hard and tries not to think of the fact that the man officially has a method of killing so nasty that she had needed royal authority to find out. It was something she regretted learning. What kind of absolute lunatic keeps their victims forcibly alive after breaking their body to draw out the pain? This man. The man she had thought might have been a good match for one of her children. Her mouth is dry at this point. The bone chewer smirks at her. I see my reputation precedes me, but fear not. I'm not here to chew your bones. Just to inform you of a few things. And those are? She asks. Firstly, back there is Arden Karm, first sorcerer of Sobin Ride. Brinchar says, pointing to the rear of the crowd where a Tret. No, and APUC with his horns filed down looks startled, then vanishes in a very distant feeling teleport. He's shy, but he also summoned a dust storm and fired a high-powered coil gun into it. A dust storm shooter? She asks incredulously. That's a bit much for a title, Brinchar muses. But that's not the point. The lush forest is in the mostly unused parts of your land, between barrens and badlands. Mostly badlands. Now this means that both areas are now full of water, and the general water levels of the world are going to increase, starting in your territory. It also means there's going to be more in the way of life, both animal and plant, to be harvested and profited from if you're respectful. And respectful is not trying to kill or poison the forest. I'm sure a grown woman of respectable intelligence can figure it out. It's normal for there to be many communication devices in a government official's office. It's also normal for them to be targeted by spies and saboteurs. There are 3 in Queen Margaret's office, and one of them has not a person, but instead a very dangerous algorithm listening on the other end. Oftentimes, when an algorithm tries to put something together, it gets things close, but not perfectly. The fine line between a person and a machine may be blurry in some places, but in this one, it's crystal clear. The directive to destabilize and sabotage Queen Margaret is complicated and has now latched onto a single conclusion that it states as its next directive. Poison the entity known as the Lush Forest. It begins gathering any digital information it can find on several search engines to attempt to understand and fulfill its newest goal. Is there more? Queen Margot says, sounding exhausted already. A saboteur struck in your land. The Fireblade's mercenaries have the full details, but you need to start combing through things because someone is trying to destabilize your land. So this new forest is a bad omen. These issues go back months. They're just starting to come to light recently. We've been here days at most, Brinchar says. Again, the information is with the Fireblades. What do you want from me? Nothing. We're just being polite. After all, one of our forests is a citizen in your kingdom. You're duty-bound to protect it after all, he says, and she frowns. Think about it. Brinchar is then gone with a final wave. Think he's having too much fun with this? One of the sorcerers asks. Not really, but I'm not in the mood to tweak royal noses today. Honestly, I'm kind of hungry. Want to see what the meat in the lush forest is like. Oh, that is a good question. What kind of hunting is there to be had in the new forest? We won't figure it out here. To the lush forest. Wait, the dark forest is also called the wood or the dark wood. Do you think that the lush forest would get other names? The oasis? Maybe just oasis? Something will shake out, the Tret sorcerer says before grinning at her. By the way, ma'am, I'm a human, not a Tret. What? She asks in shock, but he's then gone in the way that sorcerers teleport. Whole community of the crazy bastards in the dark forest. Military man from first to last. Sorcerers too. How many? She asks as more and more sorcerers vanish. Over 100. The last one to leave says, and then she's alone in her office. She takes a few moments to gather her thoughts, then stands up as she calls for her guards and assistants both. Oh? What's this? Hart Goran asks as he receives a message. It says it's from Morg Arquin. Something strange is going on. If you really want to lock in Sobenride as a trading hub, another day or two here might serve. Might. He considers before typing back a request for more information. He's currently stuck at the debate table between the representatives between House Valerie and House Atron. Apparently his interference in their game is rather more complicated, and as blowing off this bit of stupidity would look bad, he's stuck with this until the end. Some were saying that he counted as a terrain obstacle, but that had led to the debate of one house deliberately booby-trapping ahead of time, which was against the rules. The others suggested he counted as a dangerous third party, but that was mostly reserved for known warriors, battle princesses, and the like. There was also the question as to why he was so well trained, but a nod to his family history saw that out. Thankfully, House Atran wasn't completely blind to sense and opportunity, and he was hashing out a trade agreement with them as well. If this kept up, he may very well get half the planet to be openly trading with his own province alone. Apparently, the bright blue high mountain flowers were prized as dyes, and while he was vaguely aware of the dye industry in his duchy, it was about to get a boost in the form of a major customer in the Atron, who not only wore a lot of blue, but wanted to boast that theirs came from the homeworld. There were other things they wanted and were willing to give, but that was the lead into the trade deal, and would be the first thing that grabbed attention. Okay, so we need to make an amendment to the rules for visiting nobles as a form of neutral third party. Lord Goran, do you think that yourself or others could be persuaded to assist with an attacking party if they're contacted beforehand? If you explain the rules of these games properly, and to the satisfaction of the noble in question, I think you'd have a great many willing to follow through with this competition of yours, Hart Goran states. And even if you do not want them to take part, warn them ahead of time. Many nobles are at least formally trained in combat for duels or to keep strong. This puts combat reflexes in, and if you hadn't used prosthetic bodies, I may very well have killed some people in that attack. And my own reflexes, while dangerous, are not the most dangerous. Some nobles count sorcerers and battle princesses in the family after all, to say nothing of more exotic warriors. Right, while some surprises are pleasant, others not so much, or so wise. True enough, speaking of surprises though, the pilots of the attack would like to meet you, Duke Goran. You've deeply impressed them. Well, seeing as how I'm liable to be staying a little longer on Sobenride than initially anticipated, I would be happy to. Has something happened? Despite the slight culture clash I've been suffering, there's been a great deal of opportunity to be found here. Sobenride and its baronies, duchies, and kingdoms have much to recommend to them, and much of it can be of great advantage to myself and my people. Always your duchy you look to. If only my own daughters had such drive, Duchess Valerie notes with a smile. Mine was very hard won. I wouldn't recommend it. No, I wouldn't either, she agrees with him, but that doesn't make it any less of a handsome look. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 148, Weight of Dynasty. Okay, so it's clear that a lot is going on. We're going to need to do that, Eric's Huth says, and Dale nods, as well as Arden Carm. So we understand each other? I've got the idea, Dale says. Yeah, Arden Carm agrees. Good, back here in 5 after our prep. Eric's Huth says, and all three vanish. 5 minutes later, Eric's Huth reappears with some Fenny Flies merchandise. Dale has a charcoal grill, and Arden Carm has a guidebook on local animals and plants, plus a notebook and pen. Okay, clearly we've been misunderstanding each other. Yes, very much so, Dale says in an amused tone. I want to know what's edible and how can we make it better. If we're going to be spending time here, then good food goes a good way to making things a treat of a time. After all, good food is one of the big differences between surviving and thriving. I like thriving. I want to see how everything has changed by it being a great forest. Is that the right term? Arden Carm asks. It works. I want to finish getting you through your personal drama as smoothly as possible and score a present for my little girl, which involves talking to Callie Flynn. Yes. What was the last thing you said to her? I didn't. She's a friend of a lot of my sisters. She's very much been the unofficial Carm. I have no idea what the last thing I said was. I can barely remember it, and I mostly just remember that once again, no one could hear me over themselves. Right. And your relationship to her in general. I don't know her, not really. She's always been part of the big crowd that is my sisters and mothers. It's part of why I left. I heard them planning to tell me about an engagement to her, and I realized that it would always be loud. I would always be talked over and always drowning in the noise. I had to leave. Which might have hurt her, Erich Hughes says, and Arden Carm gives him an odd look. Dale can see this conversation is going to take a bit, so he shrugs and steps away to start setting up the grill. He sends out an alert to the other sorcerers currently connected to the lush forest that he's willing to fully cook and grill anything they bring him in exchange for a bite of it. Why are you pushing so much for something to benefit her? I will admit, I do want to spoil my youngest daughter, and an autographed holodisc and a story of how I played matchmaker with her favorite celebrity is a hell of a thing. But there's also the advantage to you. How so? Sorcerers grab a lot of attention wherever we go. When we're noticed, we're feared. For good reason. Most of us introduce ourselves with a 3 to 4 figure body count on average, to say nothing of the trauma and damage to the area. Hyper Creek cracked and broken by weeds, roots, and flowers might be a beautiful sight, but Hypercrete is usually holding up something expensive and smashing it like a dry cracker usually breaks those things. Erich Hughes explains to Arden Carm as Dale behind them gets his first delivery in the form of a handful of small snakes. They get sliced in half lengthwise, the digestive organs removed and skewered to be roasted over a medium flame. Yes, okay? Arden Carm asks after a moment. We're trying to change that. Being feared can be useful, but being loved is generally a lot nicer. So I'm public relations? You're already on your way. Your first big deed as a sorcerer was to cover and protect people. The worst you did was give a few cuts. You already have a reputation as the mysterious marksman who shows up, places higher and higher in each tournament, and then vanishes into the Badlands. Or rather, KyleKKent has such a reputation. Erich Hughes says, as Dale finishes cooking the snakes and starts handing them back, keeping one of the several skewers to try. He then produces a bottle of barbecue sauce from an expanded pocket and dabs it with the sweet mixture. So you want me to... No, I don't want that kind of attention. Why not? Erich Hughes asks. Because people won't leave me alone if I do. And if you want to be alone, you can be at any time. Even right now, if you really don't want to listen, you can just walk away and I can't stop you. I can try to follow. But games of tag with sorcerers are a waste of time for the chaser. You can keep running, and while I can keep chasing, I won't get anything done. Erich Hughes says as another delivery arrives for Dale. The man's eyebrows go up to see the armored creature whose segmented outer shell resembles a rock, and a bit of muscle is needed to force it to uncoil and reveal it's actually mammal underneath. You know you don't have to so damn literal with the bone chewer title. This'll be an interesting one. Brinchar just rolls his eyes but watches with interest as Dale removes the snout with teeth, claws, and slices open the underbelly of the creature to get the bladder out and then coils it up again. He proceeds to turn up the heat on his grill and close the top so it can roast inside its own shell. I'm thinking 10 minutes for the first try, then we open it up and see what it looks like. Not totally sure if it's safe to eat rare, so let's go for well done. Just don't burn it. Sir, I am insulted. Do you really think that? Dale begins to protest and Brinchar points to the grill, or more specifically, at the plume of smoke rising up from it. Yeah, there was still some hair and dust on it. What's your point? Brinchar holds up his hands as if in surrender. I think I should take things one step at a time. Get used to being with my family again before going to see anything about Callie Flynn. Probably for the best. I'd like for things to happen quickly, but this is your life. It's probably going to be fast anyways. I know my sisters. They've already called her. Guaranteed. Really? Secrets don't survive in Carm homes. If one of them knows something, the rest of them do. It's faster than our link to the forest? Somehow. And Callie Flynn is an unofficial member. Yes, she is. The pairing of me and her is basically marrying family without incest. I can see why you ran. I thought you liked her. My daughter likes her. I like my daughter. Beyond that, her music is background noise to me now. I have to pay attention to actually hear it. Well, she's hearing about it right now if she hasn't already. Oh my goddess! A voice screams out in shock, and a lithe Apuk woman loses her balance in the surprise and stumbles mid-dance practice. Flinny, there's big news. Really, what? Callie Flynn asks as she hops up quickly. The newest miniskirt was working great. They were nearly see-through like an insect wing and showed off her skin-tight shorts underneath in hot pink. Much like the top of the outfit was also made to look like a big bug was trying and failing to cover her up with wings alone, minus the bug itself. Just the mostly transparent wings for her crop-top sweater and skirt, coupled with her belly shirt under the sweater and her hair dyed to match with a few animatronic bugs, acting as pins to keep it in place. And she looked like the Apak queen of bugs in the cutest way. Read it, read it, read it. Riyad yeet. Her band member, Fenny Flies, or Shar Yuran offstage, has Flinny's communicator and hands it to her as she runs in. Her Batwing-styled outfit stands out against her bright blonde hair and its golden highlights. It's almost the same as Flynn's despite it being dark blue. On the communicator is a single message from some of her oldest besties. The same message in 20 different phrasings. They've got him back. He's back. We have him. Arden Karm is found, safe and healthy. Oh my goddess, Flinny exclaims excitedly. Does this mean we're getting that impossibly cute little man as a mascot? Urani asks, bouncing on her heels, and Flinny's eyes dart to the small collage of pictures on her dresser. It's filled with images from her childhood, mostly selfies with different Karm family members, but right in each corner are 4 different pictures, each one showing a dark-haired Apuk boy with the same horns as the Karm family. But he's always looking thoughtful, focused on whatever he's doing and not seeing the picture being taken. One has him playing a many-stringed instrument with headphones attached to the speakers. One has him mixing something in a large bowl with absolute concentration. The next has him decorating a massive cake. And the last is him simply napping in a plush chair, looking so small as to be swallowed up by the cushions. Maybe, I don't know, but I do know where I'm eating tonight. I can't wait to see him again. We never got to fully announce that his sisters were setting him up with me before he vanished. Oh, that'll be a nice surprise. You think he knows about 5 flies? Who doesn't? We're only the hottest new sound on Soben Ride, Flinny says confidently. We might be able to get a little something more. I told you he's a classical lover, right? You did? Well, think he might join the band? Oh, that's a thought. Although we'll need a rebrand. Soaring 6? 5 flies and a guy? Urani asks. Either way, I need to see him first. Oh, I can only imagine what he might have been through. There was a strange note left behind that was pretty much impossible to read. Who knows what's happened to him? You have to bring us with you, to see if he's okay, Zarani Flies declares as she pokes her head in. Her feather-based outfit in blazing yellow, with a touch of gray is the counterpoint. Well then, get Yavari and Alari, we're going. There is a cheer in their shared penthouse apartment studio. Dressed normally, Flinny calls next, and there is a pause. Woo, Sharyuran asks, and Callie Flynn giggles in amusement. The door opens and there is no sensation of things being trapped in time or stilled. How often has... Arden Karm's question is cut off as his mother hugs him. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry I made you feel that running was the only way to be heard. We kept coming in here, thinking maybe if you weren't taken or held somewhere, you might show up again. His mother, Valera Karm says before kissing him on the brow. And you did. A sorcerer, a sharpshooter, and so very, very strong. He holds her as she holds him, not sure what to say. Part of him wants to lash out or push her away in frustration. He looks around and realizes he can't clearly remember what it's like to sleep in a bed as opposed to a soft bit of moss. Blankets instead of under a cloak, pillows instead of a bundle of supplies to brace his head and neck. It feels weird to be back, he says and looks around. It's been a while since I've spent any real time inside a building. Did it help? Did all that worrying, fearing, and tears help? Valerikarm asks her son, and he nods before reaching up and then puts a hand to his forehead. He starts channeling Axiom, strong, clear, and with great purpose. There is a sensation on his head of pressure pushing down. He fights against it to stay standing and avoid flinching back as his horns regrow and in moments reach full size, making him taller than his mother again. It did. Even without the forest and becoming a sorcerer, I needed to know if I was ever going to be anything other than a pet. Anything more than just something to be doted on, to the point that the petting and soft words felt like blows and insults. Now I know I can survive. I can do something that most people flinch away from. I can catch my own food and eat well enough to stay strong. I can put together and master my own weapon until I'm competing on a planetary stage with it. I can survive alone in desolate lands. A meal of a few crickets and a lizard might not sound like much, but it's been my staple for... He trails off at the expression on her face. Crickets and lizards? She asks in a horrified tone. Some snakes and wild birds on occasion too. No frogs. Horrible texture, worse taste. That's a sign that the hunting has gone really bad. Okay, baby, come with me. We have leftover chops that I'm going to warm up so you can start getting some proper food in you before dinner. Eating bugs and wild snakes? My poor baby. Mom, I'm literally one of the best fighters on the planet that isn't already employed by royalty. I think I'm fine. No, I've listened. I've stayed quiet to let you speak. But this is something I will not be silent on. I am your mother. I love you, and I will provide for you, whether you like it or not. Saying that you're going to provide for me isn't exactly a threat. Don't make mommy make it one. What does that even mean? OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 149, Weight of Dynasty. The first thing they hear when they walk in, Callie Flynn has a permanent invite, and she's allowed to bring friends so long as she doesn't bring any troublemakers, is a bit of laughter from the kitchen. It's more embarrassing. I'm out of practice. A man's voice says that Callie Flynn recognizes as Arden Carm, but changed. Callie Flynn rushes through the entrance, and as she hits the dining room, it's a big crowd of all of the Carm's greatest hits and her non-band besties. Girls, is he really back? He is. He's making dinner with Mom. Cheesy meat dumplings. They're more than just meat and cheese, girls. It's multiple meats. We have slabs of grazer steak, landrack, shellfish, and normal fish too. No bird meat, Mother Carm? Is that Shar Iran? Is the whole band here? Valerikarm asks, stepping out of the kitchen. You are. Goodness, I was planning just 2 more batches, but we may need 3. Or 4. This one is more a loss than a whole band? Arden Carm announces loudly and clearly. Whatever happened to him must have been good for his confidence, because he already sounds stronger. Then he pokes his head out of the kitchen, and Callie Flynn gasps at the sight of him. It is him, but he's changed. The baby fat is gone, and his face is weather-beaten, and his eyes have a glint of something strong in them. The last time she'd seen that was when the 5 Fleas had performed at the birthday of Treddy Margit, their biggest gig at the time, and the security of the palace had been intense and omnipresent. Whoa, what happened to you? Weren't you a little cuddler in the pictures? Jon Guice asks. Pictures? I have a picture of you napping in the big chair, she says, nodding to the living room where the back right corner is completely taken up by a large, overstuffed, and well-loved recliner chair. It's the size of a small bed with 3 times the padding at minimum. It is the napping spot in any Carm household, and so popular that the family had recreated the damn thing so every Carm family home had one. This one was a copy of the original, which had been broken decades ago. It wasn't even the original dark green color, and instead a medium brown. But still a favorite and well-loved place. Right. Anyways, I'm kind of out of practice, so I messed up a chunk of the first batch. So we have a little under half a batch. You just made a small mistake, Valerikarm says, and he shrugs. Small or big, it was my mistake. I overstuffed them and they burst through the pastry shell. So, is anyone going to explain what happened? Hranelar asks. It turns out it wasn't a kidnapping or anything else. Little brother needed space and was really, really bad at saying it. Gothakarm says before huffing and giving him a bit of a stink eye. One Arden Karm returns with a frown. I tried telling you, but even when I shouted before you rarely heard me. Just talking? I couldn't even hear myself with how much everyone talked. Arden Karm says, not that it matters now. I got the space I needed to figure out how to handle things and can just get space again whenever. So problem solved. Did you get taller? Callie Flynn asked to stop any arguments. No, but I'm standing taller, he says, stepping out into the doorway, carrying a tray full of meat dumplings. Most of them had burst open and had a savory smell wafting out. The weather-beaten look isn't just on his face. His hair is longer, but only so much as it can catch the wind and move. His arms are defined, and he seems to have forgotten what sleeves are used for, because he's clearly torn them out of his shirt that is resting only lightly on a broader and stronger torso. He moved with a grace that suggested he had been spending a lot of time moving and balancing, and all in all. Delicious, Lali Yavar says in a husky tone. There are some snorts as the comment clearly goes right over Arden Karm's head as he looks down at the tray, then shrugs. I suppose even the burst ones would taste pretty good. Who wants a burst dumpling as an appetizer? Arden Karm says to the amusement of the room as he confirms that tougher, stronger, and more confident or not, he's still an innocent little cutie. Everyone raises their hand, including his mother. Oh, there's not enough. You're going to have to share. They're fine with that. How by the ancestors does a dust storm somehow match with a forest? Is he conjuring the dirt that it's sitting on? That's sitting on the forest? Is it even really a forest if it's just a massive collection of grasses, bushes, flowers, and the occasional tree? Queen Margot said nothing as her head secretary ranted at the sight in front of her. Every head of staff was here, from the cleaners to the accountants to security and literally everyone else. If they were in charge of people, then they were in the room with her, watching the collection of data they had gathered about the lush forest and its first sorcerer, the formerly missing citizen Arden Karm, a.k.a. Der Kemka, a consistent and now no longer mysterious contestant in nearly every sharpshooting contest she hosted over the past few years. All told, the young man, barely more than a boy, had won nearly 50,000 credits off her in prizes over a few short years. Everyone had loved the idea of a mystery man competing and had been waiting to see if he would do something else dramatic. Maybe when he won, and they had all awaited with bated breath. Now he was the first Soben-Ride sorcerer, had upgraded his concealing cloak and veil to wear the lush forest wherever he went, could conjure dust storms at will and still kept his excellent shooting skills. It's not dust. That's grass, or rather the seeds of gricklegrass. It gets blown on the wind, and the first lick of water it gets causes it to grow like mad, flower in a week, and if it's pollinated, then the leaves sprout all sorts of dust, which are actually more seeds. If Soben Reed wasn't so dry, then the stuff would be absolutely everywhere at all times. The only things it won't grow on are complete solids and barren sand, her head groundskeeper says, and Queen Margot nods. If he has gricklegrass as part of his forest, then we've already lost any security. It's already here. It's already in every garden, and no matter what, every day begins and ends with plucking more of it out and mulching it. And if that's accurate, then his accuracy with that coil gun becomes even scarier. I've read the Fireblade's reports. He's aiming at weapons and isn't missing. Each of those shots are on tiny mobile targets at a great range. If he can get into the gardens, then he can put coil shot into more or less every room in the palace at will. Not even the basement's safe. It has several passages that lead into the outer gardens, and we have to assume that if he can talk to plants, then he's going to know about them. Is this how the nobles of Serbo feel? Their innermost sanctuaries and homes all but open to potential enemies? Queen Margot mutters to herself. Is Duke Hart Guran still on Sobenred? Yes, milady, he's officially extended his business trip due to a roaring success in setting up trade agreements. He has also gained legal custody of a gaggle of peasant children. From the looks of it, he intends to set up the personal guard and servants of his heirs early, effectively rear them into the role. From the looks of it, combined with his known and stated political situation, He's very concerned about loyalty and is taking the long and slow route to guarantee it. I see. It's a wise move and usually works. And when it doesn't, it grabs a lot of attention. Queen Margot notes as the video is rewound, and a frame-by-frame playback shows the supersonic shot leave the coil gun and the dust storm part in front of the shot before the Mac cone or bow shot could. It was very deliberately before the bullet could, by the time it was about 3/4 of the way to the cloud. The sheer reflexes it would take to do that. Or he's triggering the clearing as he fires and it takes that time to open, then close. Either way, he's got complete battlefield control and is firing into his control zone. You would need either a skilled adept or princess-level combatant to survive that level of danger. The only reason we don't have a body count was because he didn't want one. No other reason. The Fireblades are no joke, and White Spark Squadron is their best inner-city attack team. They scout an area and then hit it hard and fast. He intercepted them perfectly. Distraction, disarming, and then disengaged with the targets, which means that the idea that the Force passed knowledge might be a reality, considering that 100 well-trained soldiers made such a connection more or less simultaneously. I think we may need to treat any sorcerer as elite combatants as well, because they weren't already supremely dangerous. Call Duke Guran. I need to speak with him about this. Again, what on any world would someone with that kind of power do? Who is this man now that he can't be stopped? What happens when a boy becomes an adept? The captain of her guard states, and Queen Margot shudders at the thought. So you then just start gently pinching them together, and unless you forget to not stretch the dough too much like I did, then it should turn out as a perfect little dumpling. Just remember to keep your fingers damp to stop it from sticking. Arden says as he finishes crimping the top of his dumpling and putting it down. It was odd that his mother was having the whole band helping out. Then he catches sight of his sisters making a gesture of their hand, going between their horns. He then gets it. Ah, right. Yeah. Okay, does he just let this lie or confront it? I'll confront it, he mutters to himself. What was that, baby? His mother asks. You're matchmaking, aren't you? He asks, and she pauses from where she's preparing the meat. Is that a problem? She asks him, and the room is looking at him. He wants to back up, but presses forward. I don't think so. It's been a while since I've actually, been with people. Where were you? Callie Flynn asks in horror. Her mind going to all sorts of terrible places. She's halfway through a fantasy of him being made into the cabin boy of a band of pirates when he answers. In the Badlands. This is going to be my first full-size meal in years. Most of the money I made was put away to save up for a starship. I only got halfway there. Where'd you get the money? Shooting competitions. I had my horns filed down and put on a veil and cloak. I entered under the name Dare Kemka. That was you? Shahruran demands. Yes. I wrote and sang a song about you. It's my 6th most popular, Shahruran says in a shocked tone. Really? A mysterious marksman who appears at the tournaments to vanish into the wilderness? Never seen in public and placing higher and higher? Oh, you bet I made a song about that. It's her singing about what could possibly have driven a man to such desperation and how horrible such an enemy might be, Callie Flynn says around a giggle. Oh, well then. Arden is simply at a loss for words at that. Well done. I'm not sure what to say. He then coughs a bit and after a few moments remembers that water is readily available. So he has a drink. You really were roughing it, Callie Flynn says. Arden shrugs as Valeri's eyes start to water. My poor baby was reduced to eating bugs and random wild animals. It wasn't that bad. If it smelled suspicious, you just breathe an extra mouthful of fire on it. Kills the taste, but makes it plenty safe to eat. Lolly Yaver be a dear. The icebox behind you has some chilled treats. Can you fetch one for Arden, please? I'm fine, I just had some water. Is this tub of sweetened chilled cream what you're talking about? Lolly Yaver asks, holding it up. It is. I'm fine, I swear. The purchase goes through electronically. The automated checking system to see who was buying the dangerous chemical was quickly defeated and a falsified record returned, making everything look to be on the up and up. They have to be careful with this element, as just releasing it to the air where it can be inhaled is a deadly and dangerous thing to do. Chlorine is no joke. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 150, Weight of Dynasty. Honestly, I cannot eat anymore. My stomach is literally full. There is no more room. But there's still more on your plate, his mother protests. You kept piling it up. I'm a half mouthful from things hurting. But baby, no. Oh, come on, little brother. A little more. You're so skinny. No, he says, standing firm. Just a bit. Another starts to wheedle him. Then people have to resist the urge to jump, as there's suddenly a hawk on his shoulder, and he holds up his plate for the beast to savage a half dumpling before vanishing. Then another appears and finishes it off. Where did that come from? KyleKKent asks as the hooked beak and sharp-clawed animals keep appearing and disappearing to eat right off of Arden's plate and clear it, followed by a shelled mammal creature snuffling around and clearing away the scraps that the hard beaks wouldn't be able to pluck so easily. Then it too vanishes. Where indeed? Arden teases. You're literally controlling animals to not have to eat more? His mother asks in a concerned tone. I don't have to command them to eat safe and tasty food. It's free food to them, nor do I have to control them to keep them calm. They know from me it's safe here. No one in this room is going to start hunting them. We have fed and our larders are nearly full. Could we please get back to little Arden randomly pulling animals out of thin air to clean off his plate and avoid eating more? Ron Ayler asks, pointing at him. That is a very dramatic pose. Arden mutters in the moment of silence beforehand. Did you not tell them, girls? Valericam asks. I wanted to see the looks on their faces, is the general answer, and Arden leans back in his seat and shakes his head. Really? Yes. He shrugs before looking from KyleKKent to Ron Ayler to Sharuran to Laliaver to Marlik Saran, shrugging again. You've heard the stories of the Dark Forest and its terrible sorcerers. Yes, men vanish during a tragedy to return years later as a force of nature hell-bent on causing as much damage as possible to avenge it, right? Old-fashioned homeworld stories about the times where the average apak smelled of arson and blood. Arden says before taking a sip. That was the most he'd said in one go in a very long time, and it wasn't even close to enough. Damn it. Thankfully, his mother is willing to pick up the slack. Arden didn't simply walk back without warning. We were attacked. All of us. We're not totally sure why. The group responsible was tricked by an outside party, and thankfully, no one is dead on any side, so there's no one looking for revenge. But when we were attacked, a huge dust storm swept in, and we heard Arden speaking through it, warning them off. And when they wouldn't listen, he shot the weapons right out of their hands. Never missed a shot, and none of us were so much as bruised. That's incredible. But why did you bring up sorcerers? The storm sounds convenient, and using Axiom to shout is smart. But Arden holds out his hand and dust gathers in his palm from nothingness. It then rises up and starts coiling around him and then comes to rest in the palm of his other hand. It's not dust. These are seeds, he says before causing it to form a dust cloud above. And then his gun drops out of it and he catches it lightly. And I've upgraded my gun. I shoot with the forest. But KyleKKent tries to find words. So cool, Marla Zaran says with wide eyes, which is understandable. A lot of the classical songs and remixes of them she led were sorcerer-inspired when they didn't come from the exploits of battle princesses. There had even been some arguments between her and Shar Yuran as to who would sing about the Bone Chewer when he came up. They had split the difference and led it in a duet. But don't sorcerers only come from terrible things happening? Not necessarily. You have to ask for help and accept it. Fully. Right down to the depths of your soul. Deep. In those places you don't talk about. You have to let it in there. He explains before taking another sip. He doesn't really need it, but it lets him stop talking for a bit. That's what makes a sorcerer. You connect so deep that the question of the difference between you and it is hard to answer. Normally only the desperate do that. Hence why the classics are all... Wait, what about the legends that the forest never forgets? We remixed that not long ago. It's true, I made the connection to the newer forest, but it's connected to the older one. I flash learned ancient and classical Cinder tongue in all its dialects. We need you on stage, Marla Zarin says with her eyes wide. What? You can speak in ancient and classical, right? Yes. And you can command animals and plants as a sorcerer, right? Oh, goddess, you're right. It's perfect. He'd be the perfect guest singer. Get some practice in and a mysterious extra microphone to have him suddenly appear in a burst of flowers to start singing ominously in ancient Cinder tongue? I can see it now. That's a bit much, but it would be so cool. I've watched what concerts look like. An entire crowd of people screaming at me? Don't you have to do awful things then die before going to the bad place? It's not that bad. Here, we use these, Callie Flynn says as she reaches into her jacket and pulling out a hot pink pair of headphones. They're noise canceling. Here. He lets her put them on him, and she presses a button hidden the insect designs on the side. The room becomes very, very quiet. She then leans back and starts clapping her hands as if giving applause, and Arden Karm has to look around to see just how fast the rest of the room has joined her. Everyone's clapping and he can barely hear a thing. He lowers the headphones after it dies off and hands them back. If that kind of sound canceling is on the table, why not? I didn't get stronger by being shy, I got it by being bold. That's the spirit! The compound had reached 92% completion. The AI turned its attention to finding its appropriate method of delivery. The purpose was not mass death. Mass death was simple. Mass death would accomplish its goals but was not appropriate. Restriction did not apply to creatures categorized as animals or plants. Therefore, a creature defined as an amalgam of plants and animals was an acceptable target. Rarity would ensure outrage. Would ensure. The basic AI brushed against the search algorithm AI. The two logic trees exchanged data for a moment. The sabotage-based AI received new data. Important data. APUC are a form of animal. Tret are a form of animal. All known species of person are also technically heavily mutated animals. It adjusts its targeting parameters. The environment is now target-rich. And while there are risks to having sorcerers around, there's also benefits. There may be a whole horror genre based around telling and retelling what Bryn Char has done, but his actions have driven criminal organizations deep underground and kept them from ever making too big a spectacle of themselves. And the ones bold enough to are usually stupid enough to take up the old name of the Orga girls, and the madman goes off again like a bomb, and the criminals of Serbo are scared again. And I suppose things calmed down in a hurry when the judge emerged a decade early from his trip to the forest and was able to stop the attack before things went too far. Queen Margaret states, exactly. I understand it can feel unpleasant to lose control of a chunk of your territory. It's yours after all. However, in this case, you're gaining an area almost impossible for enemies to move through unless you have made an enemy of it. All territories that border the Dark Forest consider it effectively an impassable defense from that direction, to say nothing of the fact that there isn't a single one that isn't some kind of successful businessman. The Bone Chewer's courier service is one of the best on Serbo. Dreadmoss has a personal brewing operation with a class of wine so high that gifting one to a duchess or even the imperial family for a particularly good bottling is considered a very well thought out gift. To say nothing of the military security. Right you are. Many armies get understandably cautious if they're in an area known to have a sorcerer living there. Some will even opt to simply go around. Surely the homeworld isn't so volatile, Queen Margaret says, and he shakes his head. Oh, good. No as in, it can be. It waxes and wanes. Generally, attacking another openly is only done when one is absolutely certain. Then everyone ducks down for a time, as the Empress does not approve. Something protecting you and your family even now, I assume. It's even easier than that, good queen. My opponents are trying to simply take things in a bloodless subversion or coup. The problem is that if the target is wise to such things, they're almost impossible, Hartgaran states before grinning. But we're a little off topic. You wish to... Hartgaran is cut off from further explaining when one of Queen Margaret's secretaries rushes in. bows quickly and then rushes up with a data slate. She skims it, then clearly rereads it and then stands in a fury. Has something happened? Some absolute cretin thinks they can steal from me. That's unusually bold. Individual thefts tend to angle more towards robbing corporations or the like. Royalty has a reputation for retaliation. You think someone is planning something? It's possible. There's also the simple truth that sometimes people who are really short-sighted or deluded about their capabilities are still able to pull off some fairly impressive feats. How were you stolen from? Electronically. Well, that widens the suspect pool. More a suspect ocean, in fact. Hart-Garand notes. Yes, I'm aware. Well then, milady, I have more business to attend to, and with this recent revelation, you no doubt have something of higher priority to deal with. So if I may have your permission to depart, I think the sooner both of us start our respective tasks, the better. Hart-Garand notes, and Queen Margot simply nods before she leaves this particular office to get her hands on her cybersecurity experts to get some answers out of them. What in the actual hell? A soft voice mutters to itself as the Impudent Wink receives the message. Not my problem. Weird, but not my problem. She puts that aside and simply contemplates the situation, turning her chair around to straddle the seat and sit facing the back. She leans forward to back on it and simply scans the data again. She's looking for the angle, but can't find one, which means this is some kind of distraction for someone. If there's chaos without an evident purpose, then it's to break something, satisfy some base need, or distract from something else. What's being attacked is unlikely to be finished off, so it won't be broken. Things are being treated too calmly and clinically for this to be classic bloodlust or chaos lust, but you never know, it can't be completely ruled out. Some people are freaky, some people are weird, and some people are weirdly freaky. But something like this is best served as a distraction. Everything is going to grab a lot of attention, so not my problem, but it is my show. I'll watch. He lets out a breath as he suddenly is on another world. No spaceship to carry him. Observer Wu turns to Morgark the Apok responsible for his trip that was technically many thousands of times faster than the speed of light. And you derived the inspiration to go out and do these sorts of things from the Undaunted? I did, Morgark admits. There's just a sort of energy around them. It's weird. They make you feel like you're being lazy by not doing things. And you believe this has been a positive influence. We have more sorcerers than ever. Normally that would mean that the Apok are boiling into civil war, but instead things are growing more peaceful, but still active. Perhaps peaceful is the wrong word? It usually means that little is happening. I understand what you mean regardless. Your species is changing in a positive manner without violence as a catalyst, and that is unusual, Observer Wu states. For the record, this lush forest is in fact a large interconnected carpet of grasses, shrubs, flowers, weeds, and the occasional tree, with an unusual amount of moisture on the in the middle of a barren wasteland. It is a single communal entity like the dark forest of Serbo. Would our expert on the differences between the two forests please confirm this? Yes, an unseen difference, however, is that each of the three forests specializes to a degree. The dark forest is unrivaled so far in its ability to simply feed off heat rather than be harmed by it. The bright forest, on the other hand, has shown it can absorb enormous kinetic impacts with ease. This forest is a bit more unusual in that its ability is more active, in that it can transform things it is in contact with, like a transmutation adept. Right now it's turning small amounts of dust into water so that it can better drink and sustain itself. And do you think that there will be further exotic abilities in other great forests? Observer Wu asks. I believe so. I think we're just barely scratching the first layer of paint on an ancient apartment complex. Noted. Thank you for your time. If you don't mind, I'd like to have a few tests and conversations around this world. You don't mind, I hope? Not my world. Fair enough, but this is the result of your efforts, so go ahead, Morgarten dismisses. Thank you. I'll have my bodyguards brought over. This world has had minimal human contact. Therefore, knowing what they think of our species is a very pertinent piece of information. All right then, do you want... Morgarkin says before 3 more humans show up. One with a whip thin, built in a curved sword in a red sheath that has all sorts of axiom effects dancing on it. Aren't you? Harold Jameson, a pleasure, Harold says holding out his hand.